being very self-aware and honest with yourself, like, where am I wasting time, right? Because
Okay.
realistically, that is our most precious asset, and it's
Mhm.
not even close.
Our guest, Dr. Jason Blar, is the host of Know Your Why podcast. He's also a multifamily real estate investor with Lark Capital, where they focus on anything that's a B to C class property and that has some value add. They're over 300 units in, over $65 million worth of assets under management. Additionally, they also have 425 storage units. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Mr. Jason Blar. Jason, how are you, sir? It's good to
I'm
see
good,
you.
Oliver. Thank you. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate that.
Hey man, listen, this is an absolute honor for me. Your podcast is really, really cool. For those of you who are listening, Know Your Why podcast is the name of his podcast, which I thought, and I told him this in person, so I'm gonna tell you guys too, so you hear it. I wish I had thought about that name. I would have took that at the drop of a hat. It's a really good podcast where he talks to multifamily investors, real estate investors, and just all around professionals who have a why and how that why impacts what they do. It's really impactful, very inspirational podcast. So I'm excited to have you on right now, Jason. So let's hop right into this. Welcome to Real Estate for the Foxhole. Let's go ahead and get into the fight. So you are in multifamily. You're also a veterinarian. What is it? Veterinary doctor?
Yeah, I'm a veterinary. I'm a veterinary doctor, a veterinary
Okay.
surgeon. It's better to say surgeon only because I don't know how to do all the other stuff anymore.
Got it.
I know how to
Tracking.
do surgery, but you wouldn't want to ask me how to vaccinate your dog. That's for sure.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Fair enough. So you're a surgeon as well. You're a part of Lark Capital with your co-founder, Reed Nakamura. Both of you are Lark Capital together. Man, how are you doing all this stuff at the same time? Because that's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a good question, and I think it's one of those things that, quite frankly, I still feel like I'm figuring out that balance.
Right.
We really, up until end of May 2022, I actually had a W-2 job as well. So
Wow. Okay.
now I have Lark Capital and my own mobile surgery business. So I'm still doing surgery.
Okay.
Um, but before and through May 2022, I also had a W-2 job. And so what was happening was it just got too much, right? At some point, there's
Right.
not enough time in the day. And so I decided that I had to let one of them go. I don't know if that I even decided that. I just couldn't keep it up.
Gotta get it.
And I decided, let's stick with the things that I have control over. I have control over my time. I think not to like I enjoy what I do, and I enjoyed where I worked, but I think in general, and this isn't just in the veterinary world, W-2 jobs are often extremely inefficient. So when you're trying to get a lot done in the day,
Right.
inefficient use of your time doesn't allow it. So it was kind of, that's why I had to make that decision. Is I couldn't. I was When I had the W-2 job, I was doing real estate like in between surgeries and things like that. Now
That
it's
is nuts.
where I can. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, I guess, to say it out loud.
No, I mean, because and not even to go against you, or not that it's bad by any means, Jason. I just think it's cool that smack in the middle of surgery, you get finished surgery, you walk out. Hey, yeah, we're gonna close on that 92 unit, right? Yeah, okay. Give me 5 seconds. I got a gerbil just got in here, right? And you turn around and go back in for surgery, like that. That in itself is just amazing. But please continue. I'm sorry.
No, it was. Honestly, that was part of the driver for why I left the W-2 job too, because I got to the point where I was starting to consider, am I gonna have to wear a headset during surgery to handle some of the real estate stuff? And I'm like, that's not fair to my patients. And so I look at it as, they're separate but related, and I need to be focused on what I'm doing at the time that I'm doing that. And it just, so from a being a good surgeon, a good doctor, it wasn't going to be right to be doing that. So I had to figure out a way to sort of manage the time that I was spending on things in a better way. And with that, now I run two businesses. One is veterinary surgery. One is Lark Capital and real estate related. So they're, I don't even know if it's 50-50 in terms of time.
Right.
It's probably, it's probably not. It's probably 60-40 real estate at this point,
Mm-hmm.
because I have been able to build extreme efficiency in my surgery business. Then
Right.
I'm also trying to work on the real estate game. So it's kind of just getting that, maximizing my time.
Yeah, I mean and I just had this thought, and bear with me. I feel like this is you're a DC Comics guy, right? You're a comic book kind of guy. I saw all kind of stuff in the background. You're big on DC
Yep.
Comics.
DC
So
and
what's in?
Marvel. I don't
Okay,
discriminate.
fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, so I think about it the same way that I think with what you do. I think about it the same way that I think about the Batman's, the Clark Kent's. Like you are not only, and even in the comic books, at some point they're raising a family, right? You're not only doing one job where you're saving the world and you're doing all this, but you also have this day job. So it's just interesting to me the parallels that we as kids grew up watching all these superheroes doing three or four things at the exact same time, and lo and behold, we become adults and in entrepreneurship and doing real estate, and we have our 9 to 5, and we have this and we have that. We're parents, head of the school board. We're doing PTA, coaching kids' soccer teams. Next thing you know, just like you said, you just lose track of what's going on in your time. With that
Yeah.
said, how did you lay out exactly what was happening for you day to day, and then how did you go about changing and conquering that to be able to say, okay, this has got to go, I got to do this here, I got to change that there? How did you organize
Yeah.
it?
I mean, I guess one of the big upsides to a W-2 job, and if you're an entrepreneur, you don't see this as an upside, but the appeal of a W-2 job to a lot of people, and maybe it's not even realized, is that
Right.
structure, right? So it's
Right.
you're told, from childhood, right? You go to school from this hour to this hour. You may have some after school activities from this hour to this hour. That continues, that continues through college. That continues
Mm,
through adulthood afterwards for most people. It's
right.
here's your day. This is how it's going to go. And frankly, I think, and I didn't realize how much free time I had before I tried to really, before I had a family, before I tried to really grow from an entrepreneurial standpoint. I didn't realize how much free time there is. And I see my
Right.
friends still that, have, maybe they don't have kids, or they just have, not just, I'm again, not trying to diminish anybody, but like they have a W-2 job,
Right.
and they feel like they're busy and they're tired, but it's like, the reality is if you're working 40 hours a week, there's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of extra time in the week to be used. And so for a while, I was able to do that W-2 job and still use the rest of my time for real estate, for my side business, whatever it was. But I didn't try to grow either of them at first. And
Right.
so it was only when I felt that I wanted to see growth that I had to now really think about how each hour of the day was spent. And this is a roundabout way, I guess, of answering your question, but what I've done with that is just scheduling. It really, time blocking, scheduling,
Right.
really making it clear as to when certain things are going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that has meant, a lot of it has been, I get up earlier in the morning than I used to. Like things like that. Like people can gain an hour or two a day just by getting up earlier in the morning, and
Right.
like without really having a substantial impact on your quality of life. You're going to be fine. Like it's you watch less TV, whatever it is. Like, I mean, here's an example for me. Like I I love football. I love the NFL. I'm a Patriots season ticket holder, but I watch a lot less football now. It's
Mm,
just one of those things that I would rather spend Sundays with my family than sitting on the couch and watching every game, throughout the day.
right.
I still try to grab all the Pats games, like that's my team, but
Of
it's
course.
just making changes and prioritizing.
I think that's wise. That's a wise thought process and approach. What's funny is And this is the judgment-free zone, so nobody's blaming you for being a Patriot fan. It's okay. We all can't make the best choices, Jimmy.
I was like,
But
some people are hating me right now already. They
right,
just turned it on.
right. We can't make all the best choices, Jason. But it's okay. I'm big on soccer, so I watch a lot of soccer. And even as I'm doing this and I'm doing all the stuff that I'm doing, I will still not miss an Arsenal game if I can help it. But that does not mean it's not on my cell phone and I'm not, sending emails to 5 different people or doing whatever I got to do, right, to get things done. So it's interesting that you say that organization is the biggest thing. Where was it that you started to figure out how to go about time blocking? Because we say time blocking, but it's not always easy if you don't know what you're doing. So where would you recommend someone to start at when they're looking to do this kind of thing?
Yeah. Some of it I think is just, and you can call this mentorship, you can call it just observation, but some of it is looking at what the people who are successful at what you want to do are doing.
Right.
Right. So just like, I don't care. People talk about the miracle morning. Like, I don't necessarily care that you get up and drink a glass of water and then you meditate and then but like, if that works for you, great.
Right.
But it's not going to be the same for every person. But one of the things that I have found, I don't know if this is a strength of mine or what, but I'm very, very self-aware. And so I try to, sometimes it leads to feelings of guilt. I'm like, hey, I'm not working as hard as I could be at this moment, right? Like,
right.
I shouldn't be sitting here watching TV. I can think of something else I should do, or whatever the case may be. So I'm sure everybody has that, but the reality is like being very self-aware and honest with yourself. Like, where am I wasting time? Right? Because realistically, that is our most precious asset, and it's not even close. Like, I would way rather have more time than more money. Like, it just doesn't. Once you start to realize the value of time, it's like,
right.
I'm not. I had my kids in my 40s. My kids are young, and I think about things like, am I going to see my daughter walk down the aisle? Like those. So when that stuff starts to get in your head, and you're like, how much actual time do I have in a day or on Earth? Like, those are significant impacts on mindset as to how I use the time.
That's excellent advice. That's actually huge, the way that you put that, particularly when you talk about your kids and being aware of the time you're spending and the time you're not spending with them. That's really important, I think. With that said, with you running Lark Capital, being the guy at Lark Capital, there's a lot that comes with being the guy, particularly when you're working in a capital group or working as a capital raiser, right? The capital guy. What's been your experience like with capital raising? Have you applied that same level of organization that you do with your day-to-day time as you do just with each individual investor, or how's that work out for you?
Yeah. Well, I'll be upfront that has probably been my maybe weakness in terms of the different components of what you do with in a syndication, right? So I've done well with acquisitions. I've done well with asset management. I'm a decent underwriter, but capital raising has always been the thing that I guess probably went a little bit on the back burner. Right. There are ways to manage that. One, I certainly want to get better at it for a couple of reasons. One, obviously it makes it easier when you have a deal to close if you're good at raising capital. But I feel passionately about making these offerings available, these opportunities available to my veterinary community. So I want to be able to raise capital because I want to help people and help them reach financial freedom and independence. Definitely within the veterinary community. Certainly I'm happy to do that for people outside of it as well. But that's one of the big reasons. The other thing, you can do in these instances is partner, right? Nobody really does every piece of a syndication.
Yeah, agreed.
It's just not, there's, talk about not having time in the day. Like, there's so much that goes on, and even if you do a mentorship, a lot of the mentorships are focused on, and probably rightly so, focused on one aspect of a syndication, right? Like they're
Yep.
focused on an acquisition, like get your first deal, or they're focused on capital raising and like let's make you a great capital raiser, or they're focused on asset management, and those are less common, unfortunately. But the
Right.
the reality is that those are the, it probably needs to be broken down like that, because to tell you I'm going to teach you everything there is to know about a syndication, you know, on a weekly phone call or whatever it is,
Right.
like it's not possible. There's a lot to learn. So
Yeah.
I think, as far as my experience in capital raising, I find it a weak point, and I find it a weak point probably in large part because of some of my limiting beliefs around being the, like, face of a brand. It's not
Right.
it's never something I saw myself, like
Doing.
I never consider myself selling surgery when I talk to people about surgery. I
Right.
consider myself very good at it, and I know what the right recommendations are, but I'm not trying to push someone to have for their dog or cat to do surgery. I'm trying to tell
Right.
them what options are there, which is really exactly the mentality you should take into capital raising. It shouldn't be salesy. It shouldn't be pitch oriented. But for whatever reason, I have had a hard time sort of translating that mentality or mindset
Right.
into capital raising. But that is for sure top of mind focus for 2023, in that I want to be better at that.
No, I like it. I like it. Oddly enough, Jason, that was part of me asking you the question. It wasn't by any means to trap you, but to kind of help frame the idea for our listeners and viewers that it's not always going to be one person doing everything. Perfect
Right.
example. Your favorite thing isn't necessarily capital raising at the moment. It's something you're going to work on and improve on. I do not like underwriting. I look at that underwriting sheet and I literally glaze over within the first 5 minutes, like on the first tab. I'm
Yeah.
just gone, right? I'll put maybe the price in, the whisper price, maybe a cap rate, and that's it. It's
Yep.
it's over for me, right? But with the capital raising part, I'm more excited about that. I'm more looking forward to learning and really putting the work in to get that done. But having, like you said, that partner is very, very important. I need people to understand that and know that, because that's in not just in multifamily real estate, that's just in real estate and mostly in a lot of business in general. Like a lot of it is, hey, can I find somebody that I can trust and I can believe in, that I can work with? Now, remember, trust, belief, and also know their principles as well. So you're going in that partnership correctly. But, in the generalization of it all, you don't have to know everything. So I like that answer, Jason. Excuse grief. I like that answer, Jason. I like that you're 100% transparent with it and that you're not pretending to do or be something that you're not. I think that's huge.
Yeah.
Now,
It's people. I think people can see it. Yeah, I think
absolutely.
they're going to see through. If you're not, it's easy for me to talk about it. If
Right.
if someone is interested in investing, like, it's very easy for me to talk to them about it, have those conversations, teach them about what's involved. I like those conversations. It's not
Right.
necessarily that I don't want to do them. What I find I'm seem to not have mastered is the funnel, I guess, the
Yeah.
process of bringing people in. That's where I have struggled, and in reality, I would be fine with partnering with people that are very good at it, and like, hey, let me find the deals, and I'll manage the heck out of them. And if
Right.
you can bring capital, like, awesome. Like, let's
Yeah.
let's just do that. I don't
Yeah.
feel I need to do everything myself, so I'm fine with that sort of partnership arrangement.
No, I 100% agree, and I would even argue that there is no weak part of a syndication team or partnership. You're going to need an underwriter. You're going to need a property manager, particularly now because property managers are going crazy for some reason in the world. You're going to need a capital raiser. You're going to need an acquisitions guy. You're going to need each one of those pieces to get a syndication done, regardless of whether you agree with them or like them or not. You're still going to need those pieces. So you'll often hear somebody say, "Hey, if you're a capital raiser, you can go into any deal." That's very true. But if I can find a deal, guess what? I can go into any deal just as well, right? So
Right.
I think that's huge. Now, you did mention how you are. How has it been with you being an acquisitions and the property management and acquisition guy? How has that kind of niche for you come about? How did you figure out, okay, I'm the guy when it comes to acquisitions and it comes to property management? How did you figure that out? Because I think that's tricky for most people.
Yeah. Well, I started, I started my journey into syndication with a mentor.
Right.
I did a mentorship with Ellie Perlman. She always told me right from the beginning, she's like, you have to decide, do you want to find deals or do you want to find money? She's like, you need to pick one of those
Right.
and focus on it when you're starting out. Right. And that's the reason for that is it's a good reason. My passion, what I always wanted to do was be an asset manager. And I'll tell you, or at least that's where I saw myself fitting in. And the reason is my background, even before I went to vet school, as I've worked in construction since I was a teenager. So
wow, okay.
I understand building. I understand, the value add process, like all of that is very comfortable for me. So I always thought asset management would make a lot of sense. It's not the only part of it, but certainly it's a big component if you're doing value add projects. So that's where I always saw myself fitting in. But also as you're entering the business, it's probably pretty unlikely that someone's going to be like, yes, come be my asset manager. They want someone who has some level of experience. And so I saw finding the deals, acquisitions as my way in, and that worked out for me. I mean, it was just that was kind of, I think there's a lot of limiting beliefs behind this, but I was more comfortable looking at being the person to bring a deal than being the person to bring the money is ultimately. So I took her advice and I picked find the deals.
Now you've mentioned a few times the limiting beliefs thing. And I think this is something that all of us deal with. Yep. How are you tackling, first of all, how do you identify that you have a limiting belief? And then to follow that up, how are you tackling that limiting belief and moving on from it?
That's a great question. Identifying them, well, I think first you have to know what a limiting belief is and that they exist. Because I think a lot of people go through life and they just, they're in their normal course of the day are like, oh, I can't do that for really no reason. That's just what they think. And that's really what a limiting belief is. So you have to recognize when you think you can't do something or you won't do it well, then you have to decide, is it something I want to do? Right. Because one of the concepts in a book I read this in 2022 was who, not how. And that has been kind of a game changer for me. Because I was always a DIY guy. I worked, in residential, small multifamily, in construction, and I would be the guy swinging the hammer, putting up the drywall, whatever it was. Like, I can build you a house, but that's at this point in life, like not the best use of my time. So flip-flopping from that sort of DIY mindset to more of a CEO, sort of conductor of deals, that kind of thing. It's a change of mindset. So recognizing what's holding you back, what you think you can't do, deciding, is that something I want to do, or is it something I want to hire or partner for? And then if it's something that you want to do and you think it's good use of your time, now you have to now we get to the second part of your question, which is how do you, sort of combat that or get around it? And the reality is, it's something I'm still working at. It's something that I think is a challenge, but some of it's just through proof of concept. You start to, you just do it, right? You take action, you just do it. And you realize, despite some hiccups along the way, hey, I can do this. And you start to learn and say, okay, I can take this piece of information. I can take this challenge, this roadblock, this hurdle, and I can apply that going forward. And this is where I think a lot of my previous, sort of training as a surgeon and things like that, like I don't know what it looks like to quit. I never have, and I don't. And as a surgeon, I can't quit. I can't walk. I can't do a surgery and be like, this is hard. Like, that's not an option, right? Like it sounds ridiculous to say it out loud, but like I've trained residents, and there are certainly, when you're a resident and you're learning, there are times when you're like, you know what, this is out of my league, and they call me and I come in, and but when you're that guy,
Right.
now you can no longer, sort of walk away. You have to be able to fix this problem. And I see that as where I want to get to in as a multifamily syndicator in the real estate space. I want to be at that level,
Right.
within real estate, and I believe I can get there. I think it's a like I said, it's a not a short road. Like I trained to be a veterinary surgeon for 8 years. Like that's a beyond regular college, right? So it's like
Right.
there's a lot that goes into it, and I'm a few years into being a syndicator, so it'll look very different for me in 5 more years. But it's just a matter of sticking with it.
That's a phenomenal answer. You did say during that, you said that it's a long road. And you and I talked a little bit before before we actually hit the record button. And one thing that you said that struck out to me that I wanted you to talk a little bit more about is the fact that you have fallen in love with the process. We hear that all the time, from the Gary V's to your football coach to your high school basketball coach. Apparently now from your surgeon, your local surgeon says it too. What does that mean? Like, what does it mean to fall in love with the process? How do you do that if that's not something you do on an often basis?
It takes, I think it takes some adjustment. And again, this goes back to like even the I guess if you look at it from, like, we talked about the mentorship programs, right? So,
Right.
so think about the ones that are very acquisition based. Now, acquisitions are an incredibly important part of the process. If you have a good acquisition person that's
Mm-hmm.
bringing deal flow in all the time, like, that's tremendous. However, probably one of the most anticlimactic days of my entire life was the closing date of my first deal, because there is so much buildup about getting that first deal, and it took a long like I was basically it took like a year before the closing date of that first deal. We got under contract. There's all the due diligence. There's all the stuff that happens leading up to it, and then we closed, and you get an email that says, "Congratulations, you've closed." It's
Right.
like, there's no fireworks. There's no, nobody. It's not like this screaming crowd or whatever. It's just, you've closed. And what I realized at that moment is, now we have to get to work, because now all of those things that you put into your business plan, all of those things that you budgeted for, all of those things that need to happen in this value add process to make it the deal that you said it was going to be to your investors, that has to happen next. And so it's kind of a moment when you're like,
you're killing me.
Now I have to do the next 3 or 5 years of this. And so it's kind of like, you have to embrace that, or you're going to hate it. Because it's a long time. Like, closing time is maybe 60 days, maybe a little bit longer if you have a extension. But now we're talking about years of management, partnerships, investor relations, all of that. So in reality, if you're hoping to scale, you want to do that over and over again, right? So it's like, the bulk of what's going to be going on is the process. The transaction part of it is like, I'll be fired up, like the closing day on a sale, when you have something go full cycle, I'm sure is way more exciting than when you actually, like, the day that you close, because you have that moment of like, we did it. We actually did what we said we were going to do, and our investors are happy, and all of this. It's just, so it's a kind of a different level of, I think, reward at that moment. But in theory, you didn't do it just once, so you would close that deal and then keep managing what the other deals you have.
Yeah. I think you're 100% right. I think sometimes we get caught in the glorification of what it is to be in real estate, right? You get the idea, I'm going to do a flip. I'm going to be great, right? You go do a flip. When you close, You're nervous as all get out going up to that close. And this is your first
Yep.
deal, right? You're nervous, super nervous. You sign off on that paperwork. You walk out of there, and they're like, "All right, slap you on the butt. Have a great day. Go out there, be somebody." And you're just like, okay, now I guess I got to go do some work, right? The next 6 months you spend flipping a single home. In our case, doing a 3 to 5 year hold for multifamily and adding the value and doing the rehabs and all this stuff, only to sell at the end and then to go back and do it again. That is, you're 100% right. That is you don't get the confetti. You don't get anything that makes you feel, that gratification until you finally accomplish that goal. So that's huge.
It's a little bit like, I don't know if you have kids, Oliver, but
I do.
Like when we brought our son home from the hospital, our first son, and so you're in the hospital for a couple days after he's born, and then we left, and I was like, so they're just gonna let us leave? Like, this tiny baby home,
right?
We don't know what we're doing. It's kind of like that sort of thing. You're like, I have to take care of him for the rest of his life. And I was like, so you have that moment of, wow, I thought this part was hard. And this is not to minimize what women as carrying the children and giving birth, but like, it's just, you have to, you can't look at it as an event. You have to look at it as a process, right? And so any of that stuff, and I think that's one of the reasons why many people start in residential with flips and things like that, because it's a faster turnover, right? Like you're going to do, you might do, who knows, if you're a really big flipper, more, but like 6 to 10 flips in a year if you're pretty busy, right? And you might do one multifamily deal in a year. You might, it could be that, like you hope to do maybe one a quarter, but you might do one depending on the market, depending if you're being conservative and you're underwriting, like it can take a long time to find the next one. So you're not going to have that sort of constant gratification, if you will. You're going to have to say, look, I'm gonna try to enjoy the process of watching, like, my rent collections go up, watching my units turned, like seeing the things happen that you put it to, it just, whatever your business plan is, you want to see it, coming to fruition.
Right. No, I think you're 100% right. I normally, when I think about it, I akin it to being on a team, right? Like I said, I'm a big soccer fan. So being on a soccer team, you're going to practice every day, every day. We're out there practicing ball after ball after ball after ball after ball. At the end of the season, you get out of the season and you're missing not just playing on the field, but the practice to get to the point where you're playing on the field, that you're winning the championship, you're competing in these matches, you're winning or losing whatever tournament you're in. But then you leave out of that and you're like, man, I just want to go and play ball. And really, you're not even talking about playing. You're actually talking about practicing. It's just in a different form, right? So, you're 100% dead on.
To take that analogy even further, so I also love soccer. I still play. Like, if you think about a soccer game, right? Contrast to say basketball, right? Where it's literally just go score, go score, go score. It's back and forth.
Right.
Soccer, you might win 1-0. Right. So one, that's common. Like it's common to be a low score.
100%.
So you win 1-0. One goal decides the game, but the amount of work that 22 guys have put in for 90 minutes straight to decide that outcome is like it's a similar thing. Like you spend a lot of time, a lot of work to really, you just need one thing to go right. Right. You just need that one key piece of the business plan to fall into place, because a lot of it's just going to balance out, right?
Yep.
Which like that's the back and forth. So soccer is a great analogy for it, because it's you're playing for that. You have to enjoy the game. Right. Like a lot of people don't like watching soccer because there's not enough scoring. but you have to be able to appreciate the rest of the game. So I think that's like, just to carry your soccer analogy forward, like that's actually a really great comparison to syndication, to multifamily.
Hey, listen, we could talk about football, football proper. Sorry, y'all, my bad. I play soccer as a habit. We could talk about that all day long, but I think you're 100% right. That, and it's just interesting. Your thought process behind it is even greater, I think, than mine was. That build up, I didn't even think about the build up to get to the point where you're able to score a goal. Like, there's a lot of ball passing, all that stuff. So that's pretty cool. So let's hop into the sections. Let's hop into our next segment, and this is Troop to Task. And Jason, we talked about a little bit about this, but for those who are listening and watching, what Troop to Task is Jason is going to give you one thing you can do right now to get started down the right path, whatever that path is. In Jason's case, my thought processes would be either being a surgeon, maybe being in multifamily, or just being a dope father. So, Jason, what is that Troop to Task?
I would say probably the one thing, aside from just getting started, which is huge, but the one thing to do once you get started is find some level of mentorship. It doesn't have to be a paid mentorship. It can be an apprenticeship program. It can be even like listening to your podcast and just learning from people that are doing it. You want some proof of concept that you're hearing that someone else is doing what you want to do, and then believe that you can too, because you can. Like, there's no reason why if someone else did it, you can't.
I like it. Jason, man, thank you so much for coming on today. This has been an amazing conversation. I want to make sure people are able to get a hold of you and reach out to you. If you could please give them your information and where to find you.
Yeah, the best thing, I mean, realistically, is probably email jason@larkcapital.com. As far as social media, I'm most active on Instagram at Lark Capital, and LinkedIn is Jason Ballara on LinkedIn. So you can find me any of those places. But if you want to get directly in touch, just shoot me an email.
Love it. You're better than you were, but you're not half as good as you're going to be. Thank you again, Jason, for coming on and coming through. Now, those of you listening, watching, go punch life in the face and go win. I'll talk to you soon. Until next time.
Awesome. Thank you.